You're watching once again a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. I'm Scott Veach. I'm your host, and on this program we'll be discussing topics of interest for caregivers of loved ones with dementia. We hope that you will subscribe to the channel and you'll hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new program. And now, this is Once Again. Our guest today is Joy Loverde. She is the author of The Complete Eldercare Planner. It's where to start, which questions to ask, and how to find help. It is an exhaustive source to those caregivers of loved ones with dementia. Joy, thanks so much for being with us today. I want to start out at the beginning and ask you why you decided to write the book.
I was a high school volunteer. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and the nun walked in the room and said, "Who's going to go to the nursing home with me on Thanksgiving morning?" And I raised my hand looking for extra credit. But what I got when we both went into the nursing home on Thanksgiving morning is 7 people sitting in the dark. And my 14-year-old brain couldn't comprehend what was going on. I came from a big Italian family. I was going home to food and music and dogs and all kinds of love in one room. And my brain could not wrap around what I saw. So I vowed then and there to do something about people as they age. And when I turned 40, I wrote the first edition of the Complete Eldercare Planner, just as a way to get people to start talking to each other.
And had you had any writing background before that?
I was an English major, so I had a good foundation.
Well, the book it's about 400 pages, and I'm really looking forward to discussing it with you. How long did it take before you were satisfied with the finished product?
The first edition took me 3 years, and keep in mind there was no computer, no Google, no way. So I went to the library, read everything I could. First edition took me 3 years, and now fast forward, the last edition took me 2 years.
Yeah. And are you pleased with the finished product? I know we always like to tinker with things, but I thought it was great. Do you like the finished product?
I like it because there are so many free and low-cost resources, that's where I spent most of my time, Scott, is looking for things. This is a book that's written for people who don't have a lot of money. I didn't assume that there would be a lot of money, and it would guide people to those resources like yours, the Wyoming Alzheimer's Aging organization.
Wyoming Dementia Care, yeah.
There you go. So we needed always to let people know that there are low cost and free resources.
One of the things that and I've interviewed a lot of authors over the years in my career, but you have a sentence at the beginning of the book that made me chuckle, and I want to ask you about that. It's early on in chapter 1, and you wrote the sentence, "Don't read this book." And I had to chuckle. Explain that. Why did you write that?
Because if you sit down and you open the book to page 1 and you attempt to go to page 400, you will just shut the book and say, "I can't do this." What I meant by don't read the book is I meant use the book. Go to the chapters of content in the beginning, take a look at all the subjects, pick one, and then go to that chapter and start looking at the action plans. But don't think that this is a book that you'll cozy up in your easy chair and get to know each and every page. It's too exhaustive.
I agree completely. You start off in the introduction and you said something that I have felt myself in my caregiver journey, and I thought, boy, I can really relate to that. And you wrote, "We don't choose elder care. Elder care chooses us." Explain that.
Everyone I have talked to, no matter how difficult caregiving can be at times, every single one of the people say they wouldn't hesitate to do it all over again. The rewards that we gain from elder care are not necessarily financial, but we are creating memories every single day that will carry us through the rest of our lives.
And it is an up and down journey. There are a lot of twists and turns along the way. You wrote that today's caregiver approach is more like a chess game.
Right. Well, this is because my approach tends to be a little different than most. When I am communicating with my elders, I am asking questions and being more curious than actually trying to tell them about all my knowledge and all the resources and everything. It just doesn't make any sense. So for me, a communication with my elder about a certain topic, it might be about their money or housing or whatever, is a series of asking questions and then listening and then asking more questions and getting validation from both sides. That's a chess game, and I could be taken offside at any given time. It could take me in a direction I don't expect. That's what elder care, I believe, should look like.
Our guest is Joy Loverde. She is the author of the Complete Eldercare Planner. It is available on Amazon. When we talk about eldercare planning, we can be talking about countless numbers of conditions involved in that. Are there common threads? Does the book work for someone who's caring for an elder with any condition?
Well, it's funny you should say condition. I am assuming you're talking about a physical or mental condition.
Correct.
For someone. Okay. And my approach is one that caregiving begins far before any physical or emotional or mental health challenges come into play, because it isn't a guarantee that the people we will eventually care for will ever need a day of care. Mm-hmm. My mother is one example. Never needed a day of care in her life. So she died at the age of 92 in her sleep. But what we did do is pay attention to her social, emotional, and spiritual needs. That's caregiving too.
One of the things that I like so much about your book, it includes a lot of worksheets and checklists, and you had something in there at the beginning called the Elder Care Goals Chart, and I never thought of that in that way. Goals for elder care, what are those?
Well, again, it is about facilitating their success in all varieties. So are they financially set? Mm-hmm. What about their housing? How are they doing emotionally, and so on? So what are their goals? And knowing how to ask them these kinds of questions is what that particular questionnaire is all about. Mom and Dad, what do you want? How can I facilitate that? So this is what I mean by let's have a goal for what it looks like to grow old and have us all be connected at this time in your life.
One of the other chapters early on, I think it's chapter 2 here in my notes, you talked about creating a care team, and that's particularly challenging for us here in Wyoming. I think that we are the 10th largest state geographically, square miles, and yet I think there's only about 6 people per square mile. We have less than 600,000 population. It can be a real challenge. What do you need to think about first as you're putting together a care team? Because you can't do it by yourself.
No, you definitely can. And the first thing we need to think of is the people who are part of the care team we may not be related to. So I have a lot of experience in the rural communities. In fact, I just got back from Fresno, California, working in baling hay and riding horses and doing what I do for almond harvesting and all that. So what I know to be true about the rural communities like that is we gather together in mostly the churches and the parishes in the neighborhood and begin to know the people that we're not even related to. I mean, we're all experiencing getting old together. So there's a lot of camaraderie when it comes to combining resources among people who gather, let's say just on Sunday or a Saturday evening gathering. Start to pay attention to initiating these conversations. Very important that the community leaders also break open this can of worms and start talking about it within the people who live in the community.
How do you tell who should be on the team outside of family members? How do you go about that?
Well, you start with the professionals and you find out who they are. Different cities and states have different professionals, aging life plan, community members, they used to be called geriatric case managers. You start with the doctor, you start with the hospital, you find out what the resources are available, and you begin to have conversations with people who are already engaged in elder care. Many of the assisted living communities, nursing homes, life plan communities, they are filled with people who understand this. Start with people who do this on a day-to-day basis.
And you also talked about when to tell when help is needed. That's pretty important too. You got to have a starting point.
Yeah, you have to start paying attention. And again, my philosophy is not to necessarily look for physical or mental challenges with the people, but what we need to do is start talking about how will they finance a longer life? Where do they intend to live if they can't live in their home anymore? And how to initiate the legal documents that make it okay for us to make legal decisions. So elder care in my world starts far before there's any evidence of any physical or mental decline.
And along the way too, once a particular diagnosis may received, those financial plans, those legal plans, a lot of times have to be adjusted, altered, don't they?
They have to be adjusted. In fact, my philosophy used to be look at these documents once a year. Now it's every 6 months.
Wow.
The reason is because we are all aging together. We may have mentioned someone in our legal document that may have already have been diagnosed with something, a chronic condition, could be dementia. And so we may have had them in our legal documents and we know we have to change them. And people change like the wind. We all know that as we age, things change. People move. So look at your legal documents every 6 months rather than once a year.
Yeah, and as I think about those particular documents, can you say that there's one that you should address first? Is it kind of a group effort? Is one more important than the other?
I would say they're all equally important. Power of attorney for healthcare, power of attorney for money, and just having a will is important, of course. Trust, all of them are equally important. All you need to do is experience taking care of someone and not having any legal documents in place, and you will learn the hard way that you will be asked a zillion questions about your power to make decisions. And if you cannot show that you have evidence of that, you're stopped dead in your tracks.
Yes, indeed. I think in my particular journey as a caregiver, there are things that, as I look back, I wish I'd known, I wish I could have done, and some things that I lucked into. And one of those was I got some very good advice early on about securing power of attorney from my wife, and was able to do that while she was still able to understand what was going on and still able to sign her name. And as the journey progressed, it just made it infinitely easier along the way than if I hadn't had that document. And I think a lot of these things can be more intimidating than they need to be, or than what they actually are. Do you find that?
Yes, I mean, you just reminded me of something that I say in my workshops, and that is there is no planning in a crisis. What I mean by that is it can be quite intimidating when you don't have anything in place. Then it's just really very difficult.
Yeah,
So,
a difficult job becomes impossible in
in,
situations like that. Yeah.
and we give up the right to, if it is us who haven't done our own planning for our future well-being, we give up many rights when we do not put the legal documents in order for ourselves.
This is part one of our conversation with Joy Loverde. She is the author of the Complete Elder Care Planner, Where to Start, Which Questions to Ask, and How to Find Help. It is available on Amazon. So this is going to wrap up part one. We invite you to stay tuned for part two. That's coming up in a little while, and we will be back with part two. You've been watching once again a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. We hope, if you haven't done so already, that you'll subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new video. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Scott Veach. We'll see you again next time.